Hi, everybody. Welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. And greetings to all of you listening from places like Steubenville, Ohio, Daytona Beach, Florida, Scottsdale, Arizona, Brampton, Ontario, Canada, Auckland, New Zealand, and Leicester, England. Thanks for joining me, and if you like what I'm doing here, I want you to tell your friends about the show. Let's keep growing the audience because I need your help to spread the word. So send somebody a link through whatever podcast app you're using. And by the way, if you'd like a Horsepower Heritage decal for your car or your toolbox or your coffee mug, wherever you want to slap it, just follow the show on Instagram at Horsepower Heritage. Send me a DM there and I'll get one out to you. All right, well, today my guests are Andy and Mercedes Lilienthal, and they're really fun. I think you're going to like them. They're a husband and wife team. They're automotive journalists, marketing professionals, and adventurers. And they're into the Japanese domestic market 4x4 subculture, which is something I really don't know that much about. And they take their Mitsubishi Delicas and Pajeros on long distance rallies and trips. And they're what I would call like minimal budget, maximum fun type of people, which is exactly the kind of thing I love because we need to be out there using our cars, right? That's what they're for. Anyway, Andy and Mercedes are really fun. We talked about some of their past adventures and their writing and a few automotive pet peeves, among other things. So this is a fun episode. They're a great team, and I think you'll enjoy it. And that's coming up right after this. Hey guys, let me tell you what's new at Model Citizen Diecast. First, there's the incredible Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Roadster in 1/18 scale, and it even comes with fitted luggage. Then there's the 1995 Lamborghini Diablo SE30 Jota in metallic purple. These are extremely limited edition scale models, so reserve yours now at modelcitizendiecast.com. And my listeners get 10% off with the promo code HERITAGE at checkout. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's Model Citizen Diecast. Because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Andy and Mercedes, thanks for being here. It's great to see you guys.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I love overland adventure travel, vehicle-based adventure stuff, and I know you guys are really deep into that, especially with the JDM stuff. I don't know a whole lot about these JDM vehicles that you guys have. I know you have some Pajeros, right? And a Mitsubishi Delica minivan, which is super cool. So we'll get into all that. But by the way, you guys, since we are going to be talking about expedition travel and camping in your 4x4, I was like, I got to get in the spirit. So I haven't shaved for 3 days just for you guys. And so anyway, I just wanted to, set the mood a little bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Now, have you not showered in 3 days? That's the biggest question. Do you smell a little bit? Because that's like prima.
I have showered. And,
I do. Well, we'll give you on the shaving bit. That's kudos for us.
Well, I take personal hygiene very seriously, my dear.
There you go.
As you should.
But yeah, I mean, that's like the biggest challenge off-road, right? Is keeping yourself clean. I mean, it's easy to get rid of trash. It's easy to eat. Keeping yourself clean is a big deal.
Oh, especially if you're sick on the road. And how do you handle that in the middle of nowhere? It's happened to me a couple times. It's like,
yeah, it's never any fun to be ill traveling.
Yeah. Oh, there's all sorts of stuff we could talk about.
Let's start with your writing careers. You're both writers. I'm curious how you guys met. Did it have to do with the writing? And where has that all taken you as a couple?
Yeah. So we met about 22 years ago. We were in college, and a buddy of mine called up and said, hey, we have this friend. She was down here last week. This was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I was living in St. Paul, Minnesota. So it's about a 5.5 hour drive, 6 hour drive. And she didn't have gas money. And he's like, hey, can she hop ride with you? I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. So long story short, she came walking up the driveway and got in my car, and we started talking, and we sort of jokingly say we haven't stopped talking since.
We didn't know each other in college.
Yeah.
So I knew one of the guys that lived in the household in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He knew the other guy. We all went to the same college, but we didn't know each other. And so it was like this weird anomaly of situations that brought us together. And yeah, like Andy said, and we're both through and through gearheads, and we've been talking ever since. So As far as the writing part of it, I actually went to college for interior design. So I spent almost 20 years as a commercial interior designer, project manager. And then in 2018, switched gears, pun intended, into full-time freelance. So half of my work is editorial work for automotive publications, whether it's the New York Times, Forbes, Autoblog, Tread Magazine, I'm the editor-at-large for, feature editor of a couple of different outlets, things like that. Then the other half of what I do is PR and marketing work for automotive related clients. Andy, on the other hand, he's been a journalist, for a really long time, but you do a lot more than just journalism.
Yeah, I actually, my first thing was writing for the college newspaper, right? And then I went to work for a magazine in Wisconsin. It was called Scale Auto Magazine. And it was all about building and collecting model cars. So it was like everything car related, but 24th scale. And then I went over to a trade publication in the hobby industry. So RC cars, slot cars, die-cast cars, all that kind of stuff. And then I really wanted to get into the full-scale, full-size real car thing. I was a columnist for Trails magazine. I've written for Pearson's Four Wheel and Off-Road, The Truth About Cars, Gear Junkie, Dub, a whole bunch of different magazines out there. So, and I ended up getting this PR job for a company called Warren Industries that we make winches and hubs and whatnot for trucks. And so I do that. It's kind of we've always been gearheads, and we've always been into cars and trucks. And with my job in the four-wheel drive industry, that I wasn't into four-wheel drives. I mean, I respected them for what they were, but I was never like a rabid four-wheel drive enthusiast.
Neither was I.
Before taking this job in the off-road industry.
Andy, I'm curious, what assignments are the most interesting to you that kind of really speak to you?
I really like writing about more unique vehicles. I had a monthly column in a magazine that unfortunately just went under a couple of months ago called Trails, and I had a column called Andy's Oddities, and it was all about the different four-wheel drives out there. It wasn't a column about Tacomas or F-150s and there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff, but it was about unique vehicles. I wrote about everything from Daihatsu Rockies to Lada Nivas and, unloved four-wheel drives. Like, when was the last time you saw a really super nice S10 Blazer? Like, a long time, probably. So I really enjoy doing that. And part of what was fun about that was I had to do a bunch of research. And so I was able to sort of infiltrate those communities and learn what is it that makes these people so passionate about a Ford Bronco 2. Because I don't care what kind of vehicle it is out there, there is an enthusiast base out there for everything. And I think that's what I love writing about the most, is learning about what makes people enthusiastic about the vehicle that they happen to have. Why do you love your Isuzu Trooper? I love writing about that. I love writing about the human interest part of it as well.
For me, it's writing about different topics all the time. Although my main segments are overlanding, off-road, the customized parts that go with it, the upgrades, the ancillary equipment pieces like camping gear and that type of thing, and the people and the adventures that go along with it, I find a lot of pleasure writing about anything cars. So whether they're sports cars or they're off-roaders or they're classic cars, there are all sorts of different things. I get to learn a lot while I do these stories. And I get to learn about the people behind those vehicles. For the Aston Martin, for instance, that was my first launch that I had a chance to go to and drive all the different Aston Martins. Am I a supercar girl? I'm willing to learn about anything. So it was very phenomenal for me to hop back behind a 700 horsepower vehicle and then to cross the gamut to the Ineos Grenadier, for instance. The Ineos Grenadier is slated for actually next year delivery at some point to the U.S. In North America. But that's a very unique vehicle because that's a 4x4. It's a brand new newcomer, brand new company, Ineos Automotive. It's a subsection of the Ineos Group, which is a huge chemical company that's based in the UK. I was fortunate to be the only journalist in North America to fly over to France to actually drive it off-road, one of their very early 2B prototypes. Be able to cross gamut and write about Astons to classic cars to, to gear to Ineos to whoever it may be in between. It keeps my interest. I have a chance to share hopefully interesting stories with the audience. And then I think one of the number one things is I want to create inspiring content and especially focus on women in the industry. So for me, that is an important piece because I didn't necessarily have some of the opportunities that I wanted to have. With my parents, my dad had that welding fabricating and blacksmith shop, but we were never really looked at to, yes, you're okay, you can go ahead and take over the business. It just wasn't a given. You just didn't have that opportunity. But now women are integrating themselves so much more into the industry, and I want to help celebrate that. So in addition to cars and trucks and all that type of stuff and the gear, it's the people behind it, especially the women. Whether they're a 27-year-old person like Sana Anderson that works on HD trucks, like heavy-duty trucks in Illinois, she's finding her way. I wrote an article about Jessie Combs and some of the upcoming women that were also a New York Times piece. But the New York Times piece celebrated people that were all sorts of just random people. It's like, do you think that you'd be having a quarter-page color photo of you, like Sana, in the New York Times? No. Would that happen? You never know. If you give yourself that opportunity, greatness can happen. You just have to be willing to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. So, and you just never know where it's going to lead. So you guys are into the JDM stuff, and what sort of took you in that direction? Because it's pretty easy to buy a Dodge or a Chevy 4x4.
We like a challenge.
Yeah. It's actually funny. It's not like we sought out. Everybody's got a story about how they get into whatever, how they became a Ford guy, or how they became a Toyota girl, or whatever, right? Like, so we've both always kind of liked stuff that's a little bit different, But we were in New Zealand in 2016, and we were walking towards the car park, or the parking lot, and we're walking towards this Delica.
We have to explain what a Delica is.
Right, so
first.
A Delica, for anybody who doesn't know, is a JDM four-wheel drive minivan. And it's got a 2-speed transfer case. They have legitimate off-road chops, that kind of stuff. And so we're walking towards this van, and I just looked at her cousin's husband. I said, "You guys have a Delica?" And he looked at me like I had two heads. He's like, "Yeah." I mean, like, I was like a kid who just saw a Lamborghini for the first time. And so they had this Delica, and her cousin's godmother
cousin.
is like, "Do you want to drive it?" I'm like, yeah. Yeah, actually, honestly, I was a little hesitant. I'd never driven a right-hand drive car in a right-hand drive country.
And it was a manual, too.
And it's forward control. Like, the steering wheel is in front of the front wheels. And I immediately just kind of fell in love with this tractor-like engine and this weird 80s sci-fi look, and
it kind of chugged along and then was just this little alien thing.
Yeah, but it had, they had a bed in it, and you could legit camp out of it. And I said, someday I'm going to have one of these. I did not expect that the one would come by,
the first one,
within 6 months of coming home from New Zealand. But
that's because you're on Craigslist every single day looking at them.
Well, it's
or trying to find them.
Thing. It's a thing. But, there was one that happened to be around the corner from my work, and I thought, I'll just go look at it, right? I'm not going to go buy it. I'm just going to go look at it.
Yeah, that's what we all tell ourselves, and then...
True, right? This and the other lies I tell myself. And so I went and looked at it, and it had some corrosion on it, and I was like, whatever, whatever.
It had a lot of corrosion.
And they were asking too much money for it. And so I let it sit there for 3 weeks, and it didn't sell, It was not... The ones that are always the ones that sell are the ones with all the crazy gizmos and doodads, the crystal light roof with the retracting shades and, all this stuff. And this was more of a base model. And eventually he lowered the price, the seller lowered the price down to something that wasn't going to be insulting when I offered what I could afford. And he said, sure. And I said, well, can I take it around the corner to my work and put it on a lift just to inspect it? He's like, man, I don't care. So we did. We put it on the lift at Warren, and yeah, it had some corrosion on it, but we weren't sure if we'd even really like owning something like this. So it was a good price. We bought it, and we started outfitting it with a little bit bigger tires, a roof rack. We kitted out the interior, a quick and dirty camper van setup.
We had a winch, we had an awning.
Eventually all these things, and we just found that we loved traveling in it. And the problem is nobody makes anything quite like that in the United States. It's not as big as a full-size van, certainly not nearly as big as a Sprinter van, or as, it was not even a tenth of the cost of a Sprinter van.
Well, and parts are hard to come by too. You have to really, be patient and understand where you can get parts and talk to a lot of people and, or be willing to make your own parts or have things custom fabbed, which is what a lot of people don't necessarily want. They just want to buy off the shelf and buy it now.
Yeah, there's a whole culture around the ownership of a foreign market vehicle in the U.S. that you don't just walk into AutoZone and tell them you need a head gasket for a Mitsubishi 2.5 liter 4D56. I can't tell you how many times I go in just for brakes. I can get brakes. Like, that's something I can get. A lot of the parts for the JDM four-wheel drives from Mitsubishi are the same as a Montero, which was sold here. And so, you walk into your local parts shop and say, yeah, I need a set of brakes. I've got the part number. Well, what vehicle's it for? Well, you're not going to have it. Here's the part number. Well, no, I need to know what the vehicle is.
You're not going to understand what the vehicle is.
And they're like, well, just try me. I'm like, fine. I need the front brake pads for a 1992 Mitsubishi Delica Space Gear with the 2.8 liter. It's a 5-speed and not the V6 and automatic. And there's like, what's the part number? I'm like, but anyway.
I've had that experience so many times. I've had classic vehicles where there are certain crossovers or, sort of a universal part number. I always go in and tell them what I need, but they insist on inputting it into their system, right? Like you have to start there. And it always works out the same way. They always say, oh yeah, that's not in our system.
I know. It's just like, trust me. I know I'm not just some schmo off the street who doesn't know. I will say though, and I've written about this quite a bit. A lot of people will decide they want a crazy JDM van or whatever it is, even if it doesn't even have to be a Japanese market thing. They decide they want this special European model that wasn't sold in the United States.
It's different.
And they buy it, and then their first post on like the forum sites or the Facebook groups is, where do I find an oil filter for this thing? I'm like, dude, you should have totally researched this kind of stuff before. A lot of people get in over their heads really fast. People that don't know how to turn a wrench, you don't have to learn, you don't have to know how to rebuild the engine on the side of the road, but knowing how to turn a wrench to replace a few things here and there is going to be greatly advantageous. Otherwise, your mechanic bill, if you can find somebody willing to work on one, is going to be high.
And I think another part too is you need to have patience. And if you want to, put yourself through a lot of challenge, have more than one JDM vehicle. We since then have sold the first Delica, which was a Delica Star Wagon, which was, kind of the older, boxier ones. It was a 1989 white one. It was a low roof.
We called it the Space Tractor.
We called it the Space Tractor. So yes, if you go on Instagram, you could do hashtag Space Tractor and you'll see all the different photos on it. But then we, since then, have gotten 2 different 4-wheel drive JDM Pajeros, the Mitsubishi Pajeros, and they're the 2-door 4-wheel drive diesel versions of what a Montero would be in the States. So we now own those still, and then we ended up buying a new JDM,
new
Delica. New to us, again. That was a 1994, so that's new in our arsenal, which is kind of crazy. Everybody's like, what, it's a 94, it's old. Well, yeah, no. But that's the Delica Space Gear. So we currently have 3 vehicles that we're actively building, writing about in several publications, and basically kind of sharing our story with the world.
So your second Delica, is that the one you went to get in Florida?
Yeah, that's correct.
It is. So basically, in a nutshell, so I'm a regular contributor to the New York Times Wheels column, and I write about all sorts of different people's adventures. Usually as a reporter for the Times, you don't write about yourself, but we wanted a newer van. We wanted the more slopier, curved, newer body style, which had a lot more power and had some other accoutrements. Kellen Carr of Carr Automotive and Good Karma, he is a fantastic, fantastic person. We've become friends with him, ever since we've hence bought one of our Pajero engines from him. He approached us and said, hey, I know you're looking for a manual transmission. They're very rare to find with the Delicas, especially that model year. It was just newly introduced in the United States because of the 25-year import law. And he said, but I have one coming in. It's really clean. I'm happy to send you photos and videos. And so we said, well, okay. It's the beginning of COVID. It was May of 2020. So right as COVID, this crazy thing, nobody knew what the heck it was. We were like, all right, are we going to ship it sight unseen, coast to coast, and pay, I don't know, $2,500, whatever it was for it, to ship it? Or are we going to fly and buy it and drive it back? We camp enough remotely. We had all the gear and basically said, okay, we're going to fly there, buy it, and then drive it back through 13 states. And when I pitched it to the New York Times, they said, okay, this is what we want to do. We want to drive a really rare JDM vehicle back through 13 states. I want to document the process of them as just starting to open with phase 1 through each state and write about it and going all the way through back to Oregon. And they said, yeah, if you go ahead and, if you're going to do that trip, let's do it. And so that's how that article was born. And man, oh man, it was just eye-opening. And, we were like wide-eyed by the differences of the different parts of the country and how they dealt with COVID.
Yeah, because at the time, none of us really knew what we were in store for. It always seemed like, the other shoe hadn't dropped quite yet.
Totally. Yeah, we were, we had signed up for this thing called the Alcan 5000, which is a 5,000 plus mile road rally. And it started in Kirkland, Washington, which was where the epicenter of this thing was. So we were up there and we kept hearing about this COVID thing, like something to do with this, at a nursing home in Kirkland, Washington. And anyway, we left.
Well, and mind you that, that was in the middle of winter and we were in one of our JDM Pajeros. So not only were we driving this 5,000 mile rally, it was in one of our old diesels. If you could only imagine that, negative, temps of 40 below and more.
Yeah. And we left and we did this 2.5 week Arctic rally. We went all the way up to the Arctic Ocean in February and March.
As far as the vehicle itself, like I said, it was our Mitsubishi Pajero. We spent at least 6 solid months building it up and being very strategic. And how can we bring an old diesel up to the Arctic without the fuel gelling and with knowing that we're not going to have a lot of parts, especially in the middle of the Yukon or the Northwest Territories. It's like we're up to the Arctic Ocean, right? So the rally itself was a 10-day rally. It was over 5,120 miles from the Seattle area all the way up through Whitehorse and then all the way up to Tuktoyaktuk in the Arctic Ocean. If you did the optional extremes where you could actually drive the legitimate ice roads up to Aklavik. Or Aklavik, I can never remember how you pronounce
it. It's like ice road trucker stuff.
It's literally the road that ice road truckers go. It's on the Mackenzie River, and it was 146 miles, I believe, is what we did up and back, and doing it on the Dalton too. I mean, that Andy drove. I was the navigator.
The Dalton is a haul road basically that goes from Fairbanks all the way to Prudhoe Bay.
Yeah.
And it's primarily used to haul supplies and fuel and all that kind of stuff.
Well, so the semis own those roads up there, all of those roads, not just the Dalton, it's the Klondike, it's the Dempster, it's the Alaska Highway, it's all of that. I mean, you're on their land, and they'll drive in the middle of the road or in your lane if they need to or if they care to. And they'll push you off the road if they need to or want to. And then we ended up going from Fairbanks over to Anchorage, and that's where we finished the rally. And then we shipped the vehicle home, and then we ended up flying home directly.
What attracts you to this? Is it the challenge of those long distances? Is it the wide open spaces? What's the draw?
I think for us, I probably speak for you, it's that ability to push the machine in extreme conditions. We had also always we had always wanted to go to the Arctic Ocean. We'd always wanted to go to Alaska. We crossed off a bunch of bucket list items on this trip,
and one of the bucket list items that we didn't realize was crossing the Arctic Circle 4 times in 2 countries in less than 3.5 days.
It's a bit wanderlust. It's a bit gearhead stuff. And, the camaraderie was amazing.
Thankfully, when we were on the Alcan rally with our Pajero, we had 0 mechanical issues. Everything did well. We had an extra spare tank, auxiliary tank and an engine cooler, or engine coolant heater, should I say, rather, but
all those things that we had installed worked as planned. Like if that coolant heater didn't work at 42 below zero in a Nuvik, it would have been a long morning trying to get that old diesel started.
It probably would have been a fire underneath the oil pan that a lot of the semi trucks do up there. But it's just random things like if you're negative 40 below and you're 300 miles away from the nearest town or the nearest anything, and you see this dozer, 50 feet off the road, and and it's dusk out or it's dawn out, and it's got its lights on, it's running, and there's nothing within like 300 miles. Well, you can't shut it off.
Yeah, they can't shut off.
There are people that just don't shut off their vehicles all winter.
They just sit there and idle for hours because you can't get them started again.
So after the Alcan, you kind of got this in your blood, right? And you just completed the Rebel Rally 2021, right? Which is an all-women's event. And I think it's the longest rally in North America.
Correct. Yeah, it's the longest all-women's traditional navigation off-road rally. Whereas the Alcan 5000 rally is typically at least 5,000 miles or more, that goes through the United States to also Canada, all parts in Canada. The Rebelle Rally is different because it's all women and it's off-road, primarily off-road, and it's all traditional navigation. So there's no cell phones, no GPS, no Navi, anything. They'll tape off or disable whatever you have in your truck or your car. And it's all map and compass and topographic maps.
By the way, who was your partner on that one?
Dude, she is so rad. Shout out to my friend and an awesome 3-time navigator, Emily Winslow. She's in Puyallup. We always have a fun time saying that name.
I still can't say
in Washington. Puyallup. So I met her when actually she competed in 2018, 2019. In 18, I was in the 4x4 class as a driver. She was in her crossover, so she had a Subaru Crosstrek. And it was a manual transmission. I'm like, dude, manuals, yay! Because I was driving a stick shift too. And then 2019, I covered it as media. So she was still a team with her great friend in California, and I was covering them as media. So we've always been friendly together. And then just the planets aligned and things happened with Volkswagen of America. And I said, you know what? I need a top-notch navigator, and who better to ask? Somebody that I thought and I saw the last couple of years be so even keel and great under pressure, especially the second year in. They have their clutch blowout in the final days in Glamis. And and I saw them. I'm like, oh my God, why is your car torn apart? And she says the clutch needs to be replaced. Mind you, they're literally there. Their clutch is completely torn apart. They're getting it replaced by the mechanics on site. And there were still smiles, the team, both of them. And I thought, these are model competitors. They're not losing their tops. They're just saying, you know what? It is what it is. It wasn't our year. If it gets done, great. That's awesome. If we still compete, yes. If not, we'll make it work. And so she was fantastic. She was great. We laughed so much and we did so well together.
Well, I mean, after all, the cars are fun. The gear and the kit is fun. But it really comes down to the people around you.
Totally, 100%.
It does.
Like I was talking about the Rebelle Rally, or no, I'm sorry, the Alcan. The camaraderie is just, it's fantastic. You just did this ridiculous thing with these people. I mean, and I'm sure the Rebelle Rally feels the same way. You just did this amazing thing with these people, and you're kind of bonded after that. Like we have this saying for our own outlet, Crankshaft Culture, that we're united by horsepower, right? Like you might be into classic Fords, and you might be into, I don't know, Hondas, and I might be into BMWs, but we're all united by the one thing, and that's this love of horsepower, this love of cars. High horsepower, low horsepower, fast, slow, on-road, off-road, it doesn't matter. We're really all in this for the same reasons. We just like different flavors.
I'll be right back with more Horsepower Heritage. Don't go away. Hi, everyone. I want to take a minute to tell you about Drive Toward a Cure, which is bringing cars and camaraderie together to benefit Parkinson's disease research and patient care. And here's how it works. They've got local events from coast to coast, like track days, road rallies, and even premium multi-day touring adventures. And there's even a car club challenge. It's a way for members of the car community to leverage their mutual passion to help a great cause. So if you want to get involved in an event near you or even help organize an event, you can find everything you need at drivetowardacure.org or on Instagram at drivetowardacure. And April is Parkinson's Awareness Month, so it's a perfect opportunity for you to become part of Drive Toward a Cure. You can be 1 in a million with your tax-deductible donation and help them cross the $1 million mark. Use and follow the hashtag #Be1in a Million, and on behalf of Drive Toward a Cure, thanks for your support. So when people start long-range travel and camping in their 4x4, whether it's a Delica or a Dodge pickup, there's this huge temptation to bring everything plus the kitchen sink. And it's a rookie mistake, but did you guys go through that phase?
Oh my God. Did we ever? We were just talking about this. Yeah, I mean, it's like the first camp trip we took with that little 4-wheel drive. I couldn't see out the back window. I mean, it was just
packed to the gills.
It was just ridiculous. But you know what? Like, you're 100% right. It is a rookie mistake, and I would hesitate to call it a mistake. I think it's an evolution, because I think what happens is you go out on that camp trip, you bring all the things, and then you realize I used like 15% of the things that I brought. And so the next time you go out, you pare back. And you pare back more the next time.
I think some of the things that we learned along the way is backpacks work really well. Soft goods work really well because you can stack things on top of each other and you can use all the room and just, morph it into whatever situation you have for a cargo area. Roll your clothes. If I'm going to an event where I have to bring a dress or whatever, if it doesn't roll, I don't bring it. So, but also do an analysis afterwards. Yeah, is it a pain in the butt? Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't need to be on a spreadsheet, for God's sakes. It's just
take a visual analysis.
Like, did I use this entire tote full of spatulas that I brought with me? No.
If you need
I can leave that at home.
Yeah, grab one good multi-purpose knife. Don't bring 3. And, do I need, 3 sweatshirts? No, just grab one and you can wear it 3 times. It's okay. Things like that. So, every time we go out, we pare down even more and more.
People would say, I still hear it all the time, well, I can't go overlanding in a Jeep Cherokee. It's far too small. I'm like, what are you bringing with you? You've got a family of 4 and a dog. Okay, I get it. But like, if it's just you and your significant other, like, you don't need that much stuff.
Guys, I'm sure there are disagreements between the two of you. So let's dish a little bit. Tell us, are there certain automotive topics that you guys just do not see eye to eye on?
Oh, geez, you're with the hard hitting questions tonight on this.
That's automotive related. There's other stuff that's not automotive related.
Yeah,
but,
automotive related.
Boy.
The only thing I can think of is generally I think she and I share a lot of similar opinions on some things. I really do think the future is going to be electric in this country. And I think Mercedes is a bit more keen on that right now. I'm not one of these people that's pushing against it, but I think Mercedes is more interested in the adaptation of it than I am at this point.
As far as EVs are concerned, the biggest thing for me is how do you charge it and is that sustainable? Because a lot of people buy these EVs thinking, oh yeah, I've got an EV, I'm totally sustainable and this and this. Well, there's a lot of heavy metals. There's, what do you do with the batteries and this, and how do you mine for all of that? And how do you charge the blasted thing? Most of the time it's coal-fired plants that supplies the electricity to be able to charge the EVs. Now there's starting to be hydrogen-powered EV chargers. Do that if it's green hydrogen. So there's different alternative ways to be able to do that. The technology and the infrastructure isn't necessarily there quite yet, but that's my biggest thing. So we differ a little bit on that.
But again, I'm not against it by any means. And I do think it's going to be coming down the pipe. That's just the way it's going to be. But she's just, I think, more into it than I am. I think the other thing is I also want to bring home cars all the time. And so, so I get the no.
Well, God, hell, if I'd say yes, you'd have 52 cars and we wouldn't even have
I'm just saying. I mean,
one of the other areas that Andy and I differ on when it comes to automotive-related topics is a vehicle's interior, exterior, and some of the accoutrements that go with it.
I would say mostly. I would agree with that. I actually
agree.
Well, no, I do, but I think I'm agreeing that we disagree on certain things, like being that she has this interior design background. She'll point out these things that I think are absolutely minutia detail. I'm like, nobody actually cares except you. And
it's important.
I know she piano black interior bits she hates because you know why? Because it shows fingerprints. I'm like, I don't care. So what? Wipe them down.
Plus, there's sun glare everywhere. It's like, why would you do a center stack control or center stack area where you have the bezel be piano high gloss black? Yes, fingerprints, but in most of the times the sun hits it and just completely blinds you as a driver.
Or there will be other times too where I'm like, I really like this, the looks of this car, and she'll be like, oh, I don't think the design on it is, this and this and this. And I'm like, well, I guess Toyota should have hired you then. It's like, we will disagree. Again, she has much more of a fine art background. I have one quarter of fine art background from college.
Well, considering that I spent so many years, I spent almost, 2 decades doing interior design when it comes to fine details, whether they're retail cash wraps or, certain, prototype fixture systems. Like I worked for Kohl's Corporate for a while, being able to be a prototype fixture designer. So how do products hang? How do tactile surfaces feel? How do things look? How do you interact with it? And I took industrial design, graphic design classes in college too. So that type of stuff is important to me, where he sees it in a different way and he uses it in a different way.
No, that all makes perfect sense to me. And I see both points of view. By the way, one of the things that drives me absolutely bananas right now in car interiors is all these plastic surfaces. I mean, it's the same thing like you're saying, fingerprints. They look lovely when they're clean, but not only do they take fingerprints immediately, or even if you just kind of breathe on them, but they scratch so easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot get those scratches out.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's infuriating. And that's just normal use.
Yeah.
For me,
I think one other thing that we probably both agree on, actually, though, is, and maybe this reflects the vehicles that we have. I'm still like, I'm still a fan of, give me 3 dials on the dashboard for my climate control.
turn dials, baby. That's the best.
I don't want to have to treat everything like a smartphone,
God.
where I've got to swipe left to turn stuff on and swipe right. Everything's got to be double tapped to turn lights on, and like, just make it analog, make it easy.
And the fact that we're supposed to be looking on or at the road, but yet you have to go 5 menus deep to be able to change the fan speed to low versus high. That doesn't make sense. There's so much technologically advanced things, which are great, fine. But that one of the things with the Ineos Grenadier, they're trying to be mechanical wherever they can and electronic wherever necessary. I applaud that. So that's one of the reasons that I cover that vehicle, and I've covered it since the very first prototype landed in Texas, last summer.
I think what you're talking about comes down to a generation of designers who grew up in the digital age, and
yeah,
rheostats are old fashioned to them, right? They want a touch screen or some other type of interface because that's what they know. But I don't want to see them go away. It's just so much simpler. Like you said, a dial, right?
Make it easy.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kids, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, it's absolutely a truism. Of course, I'll put it all in the show notes, but I know that you've got some socials and your own portal, Crankshaft Culture. Why don't we talk about that for a minute?
Sure. They can go to crankshaftculture.com. That's our own personal outlet that we occasionally feed here and there. But we're also on Instagram at Crankshaft Culture. We're on Facebook at Crankshaft Culture. We have a YouTube channel that needs some more content on. And then
Twitter.
And then Twitter. She's Writer with Grit on Twitter. I'm at Crankshaft Cult on Twitter as well.
And we also have a small car website that's called Subcompact Culture, and that's also related social media.
I just want to reiterate, you guys have bylines everywhere from Forbes to the New York Times to The Drive, so people can catch up with your stuff online and in print here and there. You guys make a great team. Mercedes and Andy Lilienthal, thanks for being with me. It's really been fun to talk with you. I'm glad you guys came on.
Well, thanks for having us. It's a great time.
Yeah.
It's always an honor.
Thank you so much.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. Go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and become a patron of the show for as little as $2. And you can make it a one-time thing or a monthly contribution if you like. You can set your own amount, and that's much appreciated. And I'll see you back here on Wednesday, May 11th with the story of the Justice Brothers, who built a family business that's been at the heart of American racing for over 7 decades. My guest is the incomparable Ed Justice Jr. So until next time, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.